Hello, welcome to Suburban Appalachia channel. Thank you for joining me today. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up and subscribe. But I thought today I'd do a quick video about what we do or what I do for tomatoes. And I've been growing tomatoes since I was a little boy down in North Carolina. And over the years I picked up some pointers and tips from people, and this is what works for me. And especially if you live in the southern states. We live kind of high altitude, around 3,000 feet here in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia, but I'm originally from North Carolina. But I want to show you some pointers and tips, especially those of you who have gardens and suffer from the blossom end rot that tomatoes get. And I'd like to explain some things you can do up front and along the season, the tomato season, that will stop blossom end rot in its tracks. And this works. It's worked for me, and I'm telling you this because I've done it for several years now, and it really works. But first of all, when you're planting tomatoes, a common mistake, and I used to make it myself, is thinking that blossom end rot on tomatoes was a bacteria or a fungus, but it's not. It's a nutritional deficiency in the tomato. It lacks calcium. And sometimes as gardeners, we have a tendency to over-fertilize, and sometimes the more nitrogen that you put to a plant, the more calcium it requires. And it doesn't have enough calcium when the fruit starts forming and the cell walls start forming. It needs more calcium, and so that he'll rot on the bottom because the cell walls of the plant cells, are insufficient, and they just rupture and rot away. But one thing we can do, and the common mistake I used to make, is when we hear calcium, we immediately think of lime. And lime is a good tool, a good supplement to put in your garden, especially for tomatoes. It lowers the soil acidity, plus it enriches the ground with calcium. But one of the mistakes I made was I would use pellet lime like you put on your yards. And the problem with pellet lime is it works, but it's 6 months out or even later. And depending on what kind of microbes and how your soil breaks it down, it may even be longer than 6 months. So for years I would put pellet lime, and it was of none effect, but because by the time the tomatoes had already got the blossom end rot, they had started suffering and the fruit was useless. But what I found was hydrated lime, the powder lime, and I got some here in a coffee can so you can see it. This is pretty well instant. And so what I do is when I plant my tomatoes now down in the garden and I dig my hole to put the root down in, is I'll take about a 1/4 cup of this powdered lime and add it in the hole and mix it in the soil, and this will work immediately. And as your tomato plants progresses during the season, the calcium will be available for it to uptake. But remember, use powdered lime. Now, powdered lime won't necessarily help you a lot if you didn't put it on when you planted your plants. Later, as they're growing and you get blossom end rot, but it doesn't hurt to add. You can always add later. I always do this up front. And now, we've had a cold winter here where we live, a cool winter and even colder spring. So our garden is about 3 weeks behind where it was last year. Our tomato plants, our first planting has been in the ground about 2 weeks. They're starting to grow a little bit, but we've had some very cold nights. But now I had a couple of plants that's starting to blossom, and this is where this product comes in. And you can pick this up at any farm supply store, garden supply centers. It's called Rot Stop, and it's a concentrated calcium supplement. And so what I do about 2 weeks, about right now, the tomatoes I've already got planted, I will mix this in a sprayer. All you need is a garden sprayer, and you can pick these up. Here's a small one I brought to show you. Very inexpensive, around 14, 15 bucks, but you don't have to even get one this big. You can go to General Dollar and get you a smaller one, but just be sure to mix this per instructions. And this particular brand is 2 ounces per gallon. Now let me tell you, once your tomatoes start forming blossoms, or right when they get the flower bud, mix this up, put it in your sprayer, and every week, once a week, spray those tomatoes with this to saturate the leaves. This calcium actually goes through the leaf itself and through the stem, so it's instant. But by adding the lime early on when you plant, the powdered lime, which you can get at Southern States or any farm supply, be sure it's powdered because you want that. It's instant. Use this blossom end rot once a week as the fruit starts growing, and when you get to the point where it's just maybe a week and a half, a couple of weeks from the fruit ripening, you can stop. But I guarantee you, use the powdered lime and follow up every week with this. But you have to be careful with this. If you spray it in the direct heat of the day, like right now the sun's out, you have a chance of it burning your plants. So you want to put this on once a week, early in the morning, while the dew may be still on the leaves, or late in the evening before sunset, and you won't have any trouble. But I promise you, if you'll use the calcium up front, the powdered calcium, it's instant. Don't get the pellet. Use that on your yard or where you need slow release. Use the powdered lime and follow up once a week with this until you get about 2 weeks away, from harvesting your fruit. Now right here's something I want to show you, and this is the only fertilizer I use on my tomatoes. If you ever had tomatoes and you didn't like the taste of them, they wasn't sweet, they don't taste good, or they have a funny acidic taste, the problem is the fertilizer that you're using, the synthetic fertilizer. I don't want to say synthetic, but it's manufactured fertilizer, the pellet fertilizer. Is the problem with it is it hurts the good microbes in your soil. Sure, it makes your plants grow, but it does change the taste of your tomato. So I use this Alaskan fish fertilizer, and about every week and a half after I plant them, I will put this, and I usually use a tablespoon or 2 tablespoons per gallon and a half, 2 gallons of water, and this is what I feed my tomatoes with. And if you'll use this natural fish fertilizer, your tomatoes will grow bigger, they'll be healthier, and they'll taste so much better on the table. I've tried all fertilizers. The only pellet fertilizer I use in my garden is for my corn because of the nitrogen requirements. But use this in combination with the lime up front and spraying the calcium supplement. Do it every week. You'll have the most beautiful tomatoes that you've ever had. But this is key. This is what I've weeded out and came to the winter. It is the Alaskan fish fertilizer for tomatoes, and this will work. Here in the south, also as it begins to warm up, we have trouble with tomato blight. I haven't had so much trouble here where we live now than I did in North Carolina. But one of the things that I found after your fruit starts forming, after it starts forming some little tomatoes, the best fungicide by far I've ever found to help with the blight is this diethane M45. It's fairly safe. You can get it at Southern States or a farm supply store. But spray this once a week. Wet your leaves with it. And not only is this good for tomato blight, and I've tried them all. I've tried the ones with copper in it. I've tried the high dollar or high end spray. But by far, this is a cheaper brand, but it does much better than anything that I've used. And I always keep some. This is some left from last year. But it also works good when your cucumbers, your squash gets that powdery mildew on it. You can give your squash and cucumbers a shot of this, and it'll really help with that mildew. But if you've got tomato blight problems, I think this, by far, the diethane M45 is the best. But I wanted to take this video to show you some things that I've learned, and it's took many years to come to these conclusions, but I share them with you because I appreciate you watching my channel. I hope this video finds you well, and I just wanted to do a little quick video today about some tips and pointers to stop that blossom end rot on tomatoes. But we appreciate you. We appreciate you watching our channel, and I thank you for subscribing. And come back to join us when you can. God bless you, and have a good day.